You are listening to Attractive Relationships, the podcast where we dive deep into the art and science of relationships and communication. I'm Rico Armstrong, your host and advocate for attractive, happy relationships. In a world where relationships play a crucial role in our personal and professional lives, understanding how to communicate to connect with others is essential. Transform your communication skills to increase your social status, your social confidence, and help you gain the best relationships you can have. Welcome to Attractive Relationships. This podcast is all about helping people who feel frustrated in their relationships, whether you're frustrated with your boss at work and your peers there, or with your life partner, with people at home. And we help you by becoming more relatable to the people in your life so that they can give you more of what you want and need to thrive. And we do that by giving you the skills that allow you to be an effective, charismatic communicator. Because if you're effective and you're charismatic, you are definitely relatable. And the question is there anybody that these effective, charismatic, enhanced communication skills do not work on? And the answer is maybe. Maybe. This is a topic that I decided to do more research on because it's something that keeps coming up as far as a certain type of person that a lot of people end up criticizing. And it's been really difficult for me to talk about it, mainly because as somebody who is high on empathy, um, I like to and prefer to, this is by choice, look at the best in people and give people like a really solid chance to say that they're a good person. You know, I don't want to be the type of person that says, well, because I didn't get what I want from them, or because they were mean on any particular occasion, that they must be an asshole. I don't want, now, that doesn't mean that I don't get upset, and it doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated when people do, less than kind things or less than ideal things that affect me. However, I try not to judge people on one moment in time. And I try not to judge people that I don't know, where I only hear one side of the story. But with a growing number of people complaining about one particular type of person, it really would grind my gears to hear people talk so negatively and uh, uh, label somebody in such a negative way and get other people on board with that. I was like, how do we really know? But then I did the research and it changed my mind. What type of person am I talking about in which there may not be a way to communicate with them in a way that allows them to truly relate to you? We commonly refer to these types of people as narcissists. And if you are like me, you might hear that word and like you've heard so many other people talk about it and seen so many other posts. When somebody says that person was a narcissist, whatever they say after is almost an immediate turnoff because they talk about a narcissist in a way that has zero empathy. And usually when I hear people say that person was a narcissist and they label somebody, that comes with such a strong negative connotation, uh, that the other person just seems like completely selfish and uncaring, like they just don't care. And the reason why I resisted that so strongly for so long is because to me that sounds more like a sociopath. But I had to ask myself the difference. I'm going to ask you this question: what is a narcissist? What is a narcissist? How do they differ from a sociopath? I was shocked to understand, and maybe I shouldn't have been shocked, but like maybe I felt enlightened knowing something that I've never known before, and then realizing that I've been in those relationships. And now I really have more empathy for the people who are hurt by a narcissist. But oddly, I also have some compassion for the narcissist themselves. And it's a really crappy situation to be in if you have a boss that is a narcissist, or if you're in a personal relationship with a narcissist. It is a personality disorder. Uh, this is how psychologists have categorized it, and there's a reason why it exists, and it's more than just that person's an asshole. It's more than that person is just very selfish and entitled and whatnot. It's more than that. But regardless of the reason, the effects are very real and very hurtful and can be very damaging, because the victim of a narcissist can spend a considerable part of their life afterwards, if not the rest of their life, being very mistrusting of other people, mistrusting of themselves, doubting themselves, their self-worth. The effects of dealing with a narcissist could leave the victim without friends, with damage to their reputation and career, uh, with the damage to the relationships that they may have with shared children. And it hurts. It hurts on an unimaginable level that's hard to explain the feelings for. And when I understood that what how a narcissist comes to be, how they develop that personality disorder, I realized I was married to one. And the patterns that a narcissist does is exactly what my ex-wife did. So what is it about a narcissist that makes them so consistent? Like, what are the characteristics of a narcissist? And why is it so difficult to communicate with them in a way that can get them to truly relate to you? Because if they could really relate to you, it would stand to reason that they wouldn't do harmful things. And they wouldn't be so entitled and selfish. They would care for you at the very least, a little bit more than they seem to be. They wouldn't gaslight you. They they would be different. Let's talk about what a narcissist is, and then we can talk about their characteristics, and then we can talk about what you can do if you find yourself in a relationship with somebody with NPD, with a narcissistic personality disorder, whether that relationship is somebody that you work with or it's at your home. So what is a narcissist? Without getting too much into the weeds and the details, and this is again, this was not just a quick internet search. And if you want more information on experts on the topic, I personally found Rebecca Zung as a really good resource, as somebody who can explain narcissism in a way that's just not like that's not just saying narcissists are the scum of the earth, right? There's, but also Dr. Ramani is somebody who's been on several podcasts. You can Google them, follow their content, and they can go into more explanation. I'm just going to give you the simple version of it. The simple version of a narcissist is, not only are they self-centered, they're more about themselves than they are about other people. It is combined with, or because of, the fact that they are low empathetic people. Like, their empathy, they have next to none. That's how some psychologists will label it. Other psychologists will say that their empathy is impaired. Now, to understand what that means, you have to know what empathy is. People confuse empathy all the time. So the quick definition of empathy is the ability to feel what other people feel. Like, you can imagine what they're thinking, you can imagine being in their experience, and you can imagine feeling what they are feeling from their point of view. That's empathy. Uh, Narcissists have an impaired ability for that, emotionally impaired. The thing is, so do sociopaths. And that's why when you label somebody as a narcissist, it's such a damaging, negative label that we don't want to be so quick to label, because you're one step away from being a sociopath. But the difference is that a sociopath takes pleasure in your pain, right? When you are emotionally in pain, when you are distraught, when you're not well, a sociopath finds that entertaining and pleasurable to see you hurt. A narcissist doesn't necessarily do that. A narcissist is just out for themselves, but they don't necessarily take pleasure in your dismay, if that makes sense. If anything, the only thing that they're trying to do is protect their own emotions, that they weren't really able to develop coping mechanisms when they were younger. So how does somebody, a narcissist, come to not have this empathy? Are they born with it? And the answer is no. Again, according to Dr. Ramani, according to Rebecca Zung, and according to a whole slew of psychologists that you can find on the internet, they seem to all agree that narcissism develops through trauma. It's not something that they are born with. And so usually what that means is, uh, when somebody is young, they experienced trauma repeatedly. And what happens is that a certain type of trauma affects their limbic system, which helps to govern emotions, helps us to deal with them. And that part of their system doesn't develop in a healthy way. And so instead of, as a young child developing up, you develop the ability to empathize and emotionally with somebody. That never happens because of the trauma. And that trauma then shuts that down as a way to protect your emotions and protect yourself. And it says, okay, I keep feeling these bad things. Therefore, I'm just not going to feel especially if it's in regards to somebody else. The only thing that's important are my emotions and my feelings. I need to be able to protect them at all costs, regardless of how you might feel about it. That's what trauma does to them. Hey guys, real quick, I'd love to connect with you beyond these episodes, which is why I'm excited to tell you that Attractive Relationships recently started an exclusive newsletter just for you. You'll get behind-the-scenes stories and additional exclusive content to aid in building your personal attractive relationships. So if you'd like to be kept in the loop, simply click the link in the description below the episode. Now, just on that alone should allow us to have some empathy. And then again, in a world where it's a me first, it's all about me first manipulation, and there's a lot of shame and guilt and judgment. We often, when somebody behaves in a way that's less than ideal, we don't always ask why they are the way they are. We don't try to necessarily understand. I mean, I wish we would, because if we did, maybe we would have a world where there'd be less of that kind of trauma that develops into narcissistic personality disorders. Maybe we would find a solution by now, instead of just saying that person's a narcissist and and then judge them and shame them for that, because we weren't there with their trauma. Having said that, though, that does not mean that what you experience from a narcissist isn't real. That was the case for me. That was the case for me. A narcissism. Now, I'll tell you this, like in a personal relationship, when somebody's a narcissist, they don't tend to be able to agree with you. If you try, they don't handle criticism well. Well, you might, but there's a lot of people that don't handle criticism well. It's maybe true, but an emotionally stable person can hear you. And even if they get mad in the moment, they can come back and be like, you know what, I can see where you were coming from. I can, I do need to change. And then they actually do it. A narcissist is going to gaslight you. And if and if you don't know what it means to gaslight, we're having a real education here. People use that term all the time, and again, Dr. Ramani talks about where gaslighting comes from, which is a an old play where the husband used to mess with the gaslight, turning it up or down, and it would drive the woman crazy. It's like I thought, is this? I thought this was higher than it was. He goes, no, it was always been that way. When he, in fact, was the one that turned it up, or he would turn it down, and the wife would be like, I thought this was, Anyway, he would purposely like turn the gas light up or down opposite to where the wife left it, and it would drive the wife insane. And in time, she started to doubt herself and her own memories and her own abilities. And that's kind of what gaslighting does. It's it's denying the truth in a way to destabilize, disorient you from what really is happening and what it really is the truth. I won't get into any many details on how that happens. I think if you are experiencing that, you know exactly what that means. But why would somebody, a narcissist, do that? And it's to, again, to protect their own emotions, because of the trauma that they went through. It is difficult for them to accept something that goes against the image that they have created for themselves. So if this is the image of I've got it all together, I'm the person that helps everybody else, I'm always good for everybody else, and then somebody says, "Hey, you did something that hurt me." Ooh, then they might gaslight you, and it's a way to change that story, change that narrative to protect this image of themselves that they have been using to get through society, that they have been using to find themselves valuable in society. Is that making sense? I'm it's if you've I'm asking for empathy for the narcissist, but I'm also not excusing their behavior necessarily, and I'm not downplaying you as a victim, your real pain from their behavior. I'm just saying there's a reason why they do it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the reason is they're just evil and selfish, and that's that. But what I am saying is that even though you might understand it, like my life got instantly better when I left my ex-wife. The things that she was preventing me from doing because of a lot of reasons, that the things that narcissists do, when I left, I didn't have that stress anymore. I instantly achieved the goals. Like when I say instantly, I'm talking about within a month or two, started to achieve the goals that I've always wanted to set out to achieve. And I did them, even though she said that I couldn't or shouldn't. And I achieved bigger goals after that. And so, because a narcissist has such low or impaired empathy, this is the one person, and to which I would say you really have to evaluate if it's worth being in a relationship with that person. Because if they have low empathy, it is nearly impossible to have that person relate to you if they don't have empathy, or if they're very low in empathy. And the ability to relate to you is all about what relationships are about. How are we relating to each other? So I would highly consider, it doesn't mean that you don't care about the person. It doesn't mean that the other person is the narcissistic person is evil. What I am saying is that you are also important, and you may not be enough for that narcissist to supply them with all the things that they may need for life. And furthermore, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that one of the big things that I'm a proponent of if you want a relationship to work, is that you and the other person, whether it's a professional or personal relationship, both of you have to have a purpose that you can support each other with. And if you are with a narcissist who can't support your purpose, and then you are expressing to them why this purpose matters so much to you, and their response is not with empathy, but with more criticism and judgment, or if their response is in a way of promising you that they will change, but they don't, or the change is only temporary until they gaslight you again or start to devalue you again, you might have to consider things just for your own sanity and also for theirs. Because if you can't be the best version of you for yourself, how are you going to be the best version of you for them? I would love to change at least a little bit of the discussion from this person's a narcissist, they're a crazy person, they were selfish and they only cared about themselves, to a little bit of empathy for both you, the victim, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, maybe your boss is that way, or even worse, if someone in your house is that way. I will tell you this though. Here are some things that if you are going to communicate, you have to communicate. Maybe you can't fire your boss, for example, and your boss is a narcissist. You have to work with them until you find a better opportunity. What can you do in the meantime to kind of save the peace? The one thing that I can tell you, it's not about what you say, it's about what you don't say. What I would like, I'll tell you this: I've worked for a boss who was a narcissist, and it was the most frustrating thing because I rarely got credit for good work that I did. I only got criticism. And if I ever challenged any of the criticism or feedback that she had to say, it was not received very well. We'll just put it that way. And I don't think I was this person's best friend. It took me a while to realize that she had this narcissistic personality disorder herself. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my boss. What do I do? So one thing I would do, especially if you're at work, is you don't give the feedback, you don't give the criticism, or you definitely, again, one of the things I teach as far as how you communicate is you're always courteous, which means you don't use language that is shaming or judging. That is put on a higher level of sensitivity when it comes to somebody who's a narcissist. Because if you use language that they perceive as judgment or shaming, they don't have the capacity to accept that in a way that they can be constructive with it. So I would definitely stay away from that. If your boss is that way, if they give you whatever feedback, just accept it. Say thank you, say I agree with you where in all the places. I'll give you an example. Um, I had an account once where it was a brand new account and it wasn't going as well as we would have liked, not through any fault of my own. All right. And so my boss at the time was with me and was like, why is this account not doing so well? And I said, well, the issues that somebody else started, they're still lingering, but I'm still trying my best. My boss, the narcissist, um, very passive aggressive, and was like, well, I don't understand, like it's been such a long time, like it should be better by now. To which my response was, sometimes impressions last, certain impressions last. She responded again. She's like, well, if I was in that person's position, I wouldn't have been so mad. And she's being passive aggressive. And if I continue to try to state my case and my perspective, she'll never see it and feel what I feel and understand. All she wants is what she wants. So my response to the narcissist was in a way that talked to her ego. And what I said to her was, well, if you were handling this account, I'm sure that it would be way better than the way it is now. Speaking to her ego was something that I realized was very, very crucial to keeping the peace at work until that situation changed. And that situation changed because I left. Um, but at least it stopped her being so critical, because whenever I could speak to her ego and not criticize her or shame her, disagreeing with her was in her mind translated as shame or judgment, things were better. Now, that doesn't mean that that's an ideal situation for you, especially if you are the type of person who wants to be honest and vulnerable and have those collaborative, constructive discussions. Eh, I'm not saying that's ideal. I'm just saying that if it matters to you to keep the peace and you recognize that you're never going to have those collaborative, constructive conversations with a narcissist, don't talk to their ego. Talk to their ego. And if you're in a personal relationship, which means you got to come home to somebody who's like that, or even if you're separated, but you have shared children with somebody like that, or maybe you have a sibling or a parent who's like that, um, carefully consider how you are talking with them and carefully consider if you have to. Because again, especially the closer you are to that person in a relationship, the less qualified we will seem to be to really help them, even if we understand their pain. I hope this is helpful for some of you. And I hope this gives some of you guys starting to feel like you have permission to change, that you have permission to be upset. You don't have to feel, I mean, if you feel like, man, how could I be so stupid? Again, do the research with Dr. Ramani and Rebecca Zung, because a narcissist, even though they emotionally can't feel, they're very smart and they're very attuned. They're very sensitive. They can see when you're upset. They can see when you're sad. They can see when something matters. And we see that they see that. And they can even articulate ways that make us feel that they feel. But those are skills that they've picked up for their own survival because of the trauma that they went through. So it's no wonder why it's easy to be duped, if I can use that word. So you're not stupid if you fell for a narcissist. But once you understand it, you can have empathy for them. And then you can also have empathy for yourself and make the changes that are best for you. If you would like to talk about that more, this is something that I will be addressing in the Attractive Communications Workshop that will be coming up late September. So I'll give you some of the dates of what of that's upcoming, and we can address that there. And we can also address it in your bonus one-on-one coaching call with me if that is the most immediate thing that you are looking to address. Thank you guys for your attention. I really appreciate it. We are going to be the leaders in the people's lives that are around us, be the expert communicator that's charismatic and likable. And with that, we can carry with us a culture of collaboration more so than just shame and judgment. Until next time, you guys take care. As we come to the end of another episode of Attractive Relationships, I want to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, if this episode brought you any value, I would truly appreciate it if you shared this podcast with anyone that you think could benefit from our discussions on effective communication and relationship building. Until next time, remember, great relationships start with great communication. So stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building those attractive relationships.